The Syrian Arab flag is hoisted over the ancient Homs Square as the Syrian Arab army continues its pursuit of terrorists, destroying their hideouts in Aleppo. Iran and Russia affirmed that the presidential elections in Syria are an internal affair and the Syrian people have the right to decide their own future. The authorities in Kiev use military helicopters against protesters in Slavyansk as the popular councils discuss Putin's proposal to postpone the referendum on Donetsk. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our news for today. The old city of Homs has witnessed the second and last phase of the withdrawal of gunmen from several neighborhoods, as the governor of Homs, Talal Barazi, pointed out that restoration and reconstruction teams began to enter the city to clean the wreckage and debris left behind by the armed groups. Father Maxim El-Jamal, who is a member of a National Reconciliation Committee, stressed that the victories achieved by the Syrian Arab army were behind the quick return of stability to different areas in Homs. The TV camera of News Center has entered Homs Old Square following the withdrawal of armed groups from the area, which witnessed intensive clashes in the past. Syrian Arab army units have intercepted attempts by terrorist groups to attack military checkpoints in the Western Triangle on Palmyra, Sab'abiyar Road, injuring and wounding several terrorists. A number of armed men were also killed or wounded in Kafarlaha and Tal Dhahab in Al-Hula, as well as in several places in Ar-Rastan. In Aleppo, the armed terrorist groups continue their attacks against remarkable places and archaeological sites in the country, this time detonating in a huge blast the Carlton Hotel in the ancient part of Aleppo and a number of neighboring historical buildings. Syrian Arab army units continue, meanwhile, their pursuit of the armed terrorist groups inside the city and its countryside, eliminating a large number of them and destroying their weapons. Syrian Arab army units have inflicted heavy losses on terrorist groups in Daraa countryside. The Syrian Arab army has intercepted an attempt by armed men to infiltrate in the direction of Khirbet Ghazali and another from the eastern Al-Karak in the direction of a military checkpoint in the area, killing and wounding a large number of them. The Syrian Arab army also targeted terrorists who tried to attack military checkpoints near Nawa, killing and wounding many of them. Syrian Arab army units have meanwhile eliminated terrorists in At-Tiba village and Abu Uthman farm on Al-Yaduda, Ataman and Busra al-Msafra roads, as well as near Tal Za'atar. Welcome back. In a press conference following the emergency meeting of Al-Quds International Foundation, the political and media advisor at the presidency, Dr. Bouthina Shaaban, said, "What is happening in Arab countries and the attempts to distract the Arab and Islamic nations with internal problems are but an attempt to end the Arab-Israeli conflict the way the Zionists want it to end. This deadly Arab winter, so-called Arab Spring," Dr. Shaaban added, "will only lead to a real Arab Spring to be brought about by the Arab nation through resistance and constant struggle to recover Arab rights. Syria, with the leadership of President Bashar al-Assad," Dr. Shaaban affirmed, "and the sacrifices of its army and people, is aware of the seriousness of the present stage and is currently waging a just war to safeguard the Arab nation's principles and identity." Iranian Assistant Foreign Minister for Arab and African Affairs Hussein Amir Abdullahian has said the presidential elections in Syria are an internal matter and it is the Syrian people's right to determine their own future. During his meeting with the Russian envoy for Middle Eastern Affairs, Mikhail Bogdanov, Abdullahian said the presidential runoff in Syria means a new opportunity for a political solution to the crisis. All the sides which support such a solution may perform an important role to solve the crisis through their support of the political process, Abdullahian added. He added that Iran and Russia have three priorities in approaching the Syrian question, namely to help and support the Syrian people, combat terrorism and extremism, and work to solve the crisis in this country politically. On his part, Bogdanov stressed the need to find a political solution to the crisis that would restore stability and security to the country. China criticized the policy of double standards pursued by the United States towards combating terrorism, refusing to include Cuba in the U.S. list of countries supporting terrorism. The Chinese attitude is expressed by the spokeswoman for Chinese Foreign Ministry, Zhuan Chunying, who stressed that terrorism is a common enemy for all mankind, adding that her country always calls for unifying efforts to combat international terrorism. Yang pointed out that Cuba had already condemned the American step, calling for cancelling its name from that list. Finally, within the framework of the oppressive campaign against the demonstrators southeast of the country, the new authorities in Kiev used armored vehicles and helicopters to silence protesters in the city of Slavyansk, which has been under siege by security forces for days. The Ukrainian Minister of Interior acknowledged in a statement that Kiev authorities used armored vehicles to confront the demonstrators who are in favor of a federal system. The military operations resulted in the killing of dozens of civilians in Slavyansk since last Monday. Meanwhile, popular councils in the districts of Donetsk and Lugansk are reviewing President Putin's proposal about postponing the referendum scheduled on the 11th of May in order to pave the way for a political dialogue. With this, we end our news for today. Thank you for watching. For more details about Syria and the region and to view this bulletin again, you can always visit our website in English, syriaonline.sy. Now to latest business and market news with Karun Kürkcan, but after a short break.